Good morning and welcome back to the channel. Today is July 16th and I'm doing another garden tour. This one's going to be really quick because I am trying to take advantage of about 10 minutes before my husband goes to work. So this is just going to be really quick. I've been meaning to do garden tours more regularly, but at the beginning of the season I was using about 1 to 2 hours before my husband went to work in the garden. Well, then my cow calved and I've been milking during that time now. So my garden has really gotten away from me. We did recently just hire a babysitter to come once a week for 4 hours in the morning to watch the kids so that I can be outside and just focus on the garden. That's helping, but that just started last week. So maybe next summer we'll be able to get that started at the beginning of the season. I was looking for some help in the garden, but even when you pay people pretty decent money, they don't really want to do this hard of work and be in the heat, and it's not reliable, and it hasn't worked out. I haven't found anybody that I could trust to be at my home around my kids and also would do a good job. So I'm still looking. Maybe next year I'll be able to find an employee that I can trust and is reliable. But for right now, it's just me, and with 2 kids and a dairy cow and a garden, it's a lot. Especially when your husband is a row crop farmer and a livestock farmer, and this is his busy season as well. He's very rarely here, so I just have to do the best that I can. So as you can see, it is an absolute jungle. Actually looks a little better now than it did a week ago, but I want to show you some of the things that are going well. So this bed here has quite a few carrots in it, also quite a few weeds, but the carrots are doing really well. I actually pulled one up yesterday and it actually looked pretty decent. Yeah, so they're getting there. They're not quite as big as I'd like them to be, so there's still time for them to go. But they are getting there. So I'll keep that and take it inside. These are my onions. Really need to get in here and harvest those. That's my plan for this week when our babysitter comes. This bed here was all of my beets and radish. Of course, we've already harvested all of that, and so I ripped all that out and re-sowed some green beans. So we'll have a second flush of green beans going in there. And this bed, I need to rip out still. This was our salad bar bed with all of our greens. And let me show you over here. You can tell the cabbage worms have been horrendous in this bed. So all of this is going to get ripped out and fed to the chickens. And I am actually going to try something new. I've heard a lot of people say that they have good luck doing a second round of potatoes. We've harvested our potatoes already and they didn't do as well as I had hoped. So I was going to try planting another round in here and seeing if we can get a fall round of potatoes. I've never planted potatoes in July, but it's worth a shot. I'm going to have an empty bed here. So we'll just keep cycling things out. And typically I like the fall garden better than the summer garden anyways, because it's easier for me to maintain. We'll see if that's true this year because I've never had a dairy cow before. And that dairy cow will still be in milk in the fall. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But I'm going to plant some potatoes in there. And everything else is doing really pretty well. I mean, way better than my garden did last year when I was pregnant and wasn't out here at all. I've had a ton of squash already harvested, tons of green beans. Again, I harvested my potatoes. We've got a lot of watermelon and cantaloupe. I'm not going to walk in there because it's kind of a jungle, and I don't want to step on anything, but that right there is a cantaloupe that's doing really well. And further back, I have a bunch of watermelon. And then you can kind of see my squash and zucchini. My camera won't focus. We'll just do it that way. But you can see my squash and zucchini. They're doing really, really well. I'm just now starting to see the squash bug pressure. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I've pretty well got the squash that I need for the season. I do want to freeze some for zucchini bread later in the year. But I've already made zucchini relish. We've eaten fresh squash like every day. And then I had my early round of green beans in here, which I can probably still get another picking off of those before my raised bed is ready. And then this right here is a Mexican sunflower. So is that. They should continue to grow and get really big and be beautiful. I've got all of my flowers here along the perimeter that I had told you about, and they're in bloom and very pretty. Some hollyhocks there, some calendula, blanket flower, some straw flower. another hollyhock, some nasturtiums, a geranium I just threw in there, celosia, another straw flower, and of course some zinnias because they just do so well. I don't remember if I mentioned this or not in one of my videos, but I have an idea for changing the garden for next year. Originally, when I came up with this idea, I was going to put a seating area with string lights and picnic tables and everything right here. But after my potatoes performed poorly over here, I've changed my mind. So let's walk over here. I'm going to end up putting the seating area with string lights and picnic tables where my potatoes were, which is actually closer to the house and where we already have one of our picnic tables. But it's going to go right here. And that's just because this tree behind me really makes it difficult for anything to grow in this spot. I've tried a couple of things over the last few years. The year that Kyle and I were engaged, I tried lettuce. That didn't work. Last year, I tried garlic. That didn't do well. And this year I tried potatoes and that didn't do well. So since things don't grow well in that spot, the soil is very compact and the tree takes all of the moisture. So since that is the case, I'm going to put the seating area here. And I'll probably move my potatoes down to the middle of the garden where I originally intended to put the seating area. The straw bales didn't work that great for me. And I think, as you can see, like everything from here on that was in the straw bales is dead. The basil actually did fine, but I didn't keep up with the watering very well and they dry out extremely quick. So if you're going to do straw bale gardening, definitely keep that in mind. Now this is my winter squash patch, which if you've been following, typically we plant that over in the pasture, but with circumstances this year, we just didn't get to that. So I threw it in here just to make it easy on myself and to get something planted. And it's doing pretty well. And I've got some sweet potatoes going down here. So I'll be curious to see, that's where the sweet potatoes are. I'll be curious to see how they do. Now, like I said, the weeds are out of control in this garden. We've just been mowing the pathways and weed eating the edges and trying to keep up with it, but we've actually been blessed with quite a bit of rain this year. Still not really enough for what the big time farmers need around here, but enough to make my garden grow like crazy, which I'm very thankful for. And so I've just been doing my best around the weeds. You can have a very weedy garden and it still produce. Now granted, if you're gardening and you're keeping up and you're maintaining without the weeds, it's probably going to produce a little bit more because it doesn't have to compete, but it is okay to have weeds in your garden. You will live, most of your plants will live, and will produce for you. Sometimes you just have to do the best you can with the time you have and the resources you have. So moving on, this is my okra, and I just harvested this last night, so probably not much on there besides like these little guys. But this is a red okra, and that's the first year I've tried red okra. We love it. My husband's not a fan of the jambalaya kind because he says that they tend to be a little bit harder even when they're small. They're not tender. I've never grown those, so I don't know. But this particular variety, which I'll try to throw it on the screen, I don't remember what it is. They're very good, and they get very long and very tender even when they're long. And then down here is my Clemson spineless. And that's my favorite okra. It just performs really well and stays tender a little bit longer. Now the okra looks really short right now, but that okra will be as tall as me by August, I'm sure. So I love that the okra is starting to come in. My CSA program will be getting some okra in their baskets this week. We are halfway through the program already. It's hard to believe. I had originally intended on documenting that this year for you guys and showing you what the baskets looked like each week. But I've just been kind of drowning in work between the two kids and the dairy cow and trying to help my husband and all the stuff around the house that we've had to get done. I just have not been able to focus on social media as much as I would have liked, but the family comes first. So maybe the next time I run a CSA, we'll do that. I say that because I have some plans for next year and I'm going to be changing some things, and some of those changes involve the CSA program. So I'll get into more specifics on that next year. but there's a lot of changes coming, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have the store, we have the dairy cow, and we will be starting homeschool this year for my oldest. And so we just have to change a few things to make it a little bit more functional for our family and take a little bit of the pressure off of me. So here's my tomato jungle, and I've harvested very few ripe slicing tomatoes out of here, but there are so many green tomatoes in here, it's not even funny. So it won't be long. I plan on getting the weed eater to come out here and weed all of this. And that should help get a little bit more sunlight to the plants and help those tomatoes to ripen. As you can see, I've been experiencing the hornworm damage. There, I switched settings on my camera because the autofocus was just not working. So I have a lot of little, ooh, we cannot lose a sun gold. Where'd he go? So I have a lot of sun golds, and these are my favorite garden snack. Now this one's not quite ripe, but this one is. You can kind of tell the difference. This one's ripe. This one's like a day away from being ripe. It'll be ripe by the end of the day, I'm sure. But oh, they're so good. And then as we come down, I have some of my, like, I forget what variety this is, but they're like a saladette. Let me see if I can't get a good view here. They're like a saladette, and you can see I've got some blight starting. We live in west central Missouri, and it's humid here. So blight is something I deal with almost every year. It's in the soil, it comes back, but that's okay. Look, there's tons I need to get in there and harvest today. So I have been dealing with hornworm damage. I am dealing with blight. I did not get these pruned as well as I originally intended to, just because, again, I am wearing many hats and I'm torn in many different directions. And so I just do the best I can. But we're producing and we're preserving food for my family for winter. So it's still good. Anyways, I'm going to take you over and show you. Oh, actually, let's start with the blackberries first. So these blackberry plants were a gift from my mother-in-law. They're actually off of her plants. And today I'm going to come out here and do some more harvesting. I harvested a few yesterday and got plenty more to harvest. And they are just so delicious. Now, I will snack on tomatoes in the garden and cucumbers and okra, but I will not snack on berries until they've been rinsed because, well, the worms. And here's my dog eating some of the weeds that are growing. This is a gooseberry bush. I harvested one gooseberry off of it this year. It's only its second year, so that's not surprising. But maybe next year we'll have some gooseberries. And then, of course, my volunteer sunflower patch, which I am letting all of the heads stay on and drop their seeds, letting the birds eat them, because I want a lot more sunflowers again next year. And this is one of the easiest ways to do it. Just let them drop their seeds. So we've got that. Now, the flower part of the garden is going to change quite a bit. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning. I just got done milking Dolly before I started this garden tour, and I'm sweating. It is humid. It was raining right before I went out to milk Dolly, and so all that moisture is just in the air, and it's hot, and it's just gross. But anyways, the flower section is going to get changed a lot for next year. And if I can hire an employee and get a babysitter 1 or 2 days a week, this thing is going to look so good, because I have really good ideas for what I want to do with it, but I'm going to have some help to make that happen. Or I might have to see if my mom can come and sit with the kids a couple times or something. We're going to have to figure something out, because I want to get this done, and I'm tired of looking at it like a jungle, but there's just only so much one person can do. And so it is what it is, but I'm very excited. So I've got my zinnias here, and they're starting to grow. Of course, the sunflowers were back there, and all of the little bits of flowers you see in here, that is all just volunteered from last year, minus I planted some glads. But I didn't hardly get to planting my flowers this year because I was so busy trying to catch up from last year and it just being out of control and getting the garden cleaned up and prepped after a really bad season last year. And I had so much pressure on me for the CSA to make sure all the vegetables got planted that I didn't even get to do the fun stuff, which is the flowers. I love my vegetables, don't get me wrong. I love the vegetables, but the flowers bring me so much joy. And I didn't get to really focus on that at all this year. And that's part of why we are making a lot of changes. My husband and I have talked a lot, and something is going to have to change because honestly, the way I've been running things, it's taking the joy from the garden away from me because there's so much stress and pressure. And so I'm going to go back to just making it fun. And we have our store. We have Dolly, who will provide milk for us to sell as well as feed our family. And so, yeah, there's just no reason for me to have that much pressure in the area that I love the most. So we're changing things, and next year is going to be just for fun. So I'm really looking forward to that. But let's take a peek at some of the things that volunteered from last year. Actually, let's look at the tunnel first before I forget. Not the tunnel, the arch trellis. That's what I'm trying to say. So again, lots of weeds, but this morning glory volunteered from last year, and I know a lot of people cringe at the fact that I purposely planted morning glory in my garden because of bindweed, and I do fight bindweed like the wild kind, and it drives me batty. But these have really pretty flowers, and they're pretty, so yeah, I put them in here. Most people don't do that, but it doesn't bother me. Have some slicer cucumbers here and over there. I've got some to harvest. Look at this. I didn't even see that one last night. So I'm gonna have to come out here and harvest some cucumbers, and they're finally starting to take off, which is great. If you remember from some of my earlier garden tours, I had the sweet peas on this trellis too, and I thought that was going to work really well because I thought, oh, the peas will grow up, and by the time they start dying off, then the cucumbers will really be taking off. I'm gonna have to remind myself not to do that next year because the peas really hindered the cucumbers from getting started. Like, they just got started when I ripped the plants out, the pea plants out, like 2 weeks ago. So not gonna do that next year. Over here, you can see I've got some birdhouse gourds over there. I've got a couple of them on the vine already, and they're just really taking off. Like, they're already climbing down. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then this side is a loofah gourd. And I see some of this, but I don't see any full-on loofahs yet. So we'll see. But the trellis is starting to take off. Again, I really need to not do the peas in the same area that I'm doing all of this next year, because this would look so much more full, I think, if I hadn't done that. But you live and learn, and you only know if you try. So it's okay. And then here's a little bit of a different view on some of the winter squashes. I don't remember exactly what varieties I have planted here, but you can see there's all kinds of little yellow blossoms. So they're doing pretty well, even with the weeds. They don't seem to mind. Okay, so here's my volunteer Cosmo patch, which I love cosmos. They're just so whimsical and beautiful. And if you can see the purple there, this is why people hate putting morning glories in their garden, because they do that. Because that is not exactly where I planted them. I planted them here. But a bird probably ate them last year, and it started to plant over there. And that's fine with me. I really don't care. These are the kinds of weeds that I hate taking over my garden, but stuff like that, I just don't really care. Okay, and then this is Hot Biscuits Amaranth, and that volunteered from last year or came back. I'm not really sure. It either reseeded or it just came back, but it's here. Got some bachelor buttons down there, which I love. My yarrow came back, and it was really big and beautiful. It had some like creamy yellow, and then they turn white, and now of course as they dry they go more brown. This is what they started out looking like. And next year, again, if I can have a little bit of help and I can focus more on this front part or the northern edge of my garden, which is where all my flowers are, I want to do some experimenting with interplanting and planting some more vegetables down here as well as the flowers. And then I want to make it look like just a kind of wild, not this wild, but a kind of wild cottage garden. Like, all the wildness will actually be flowers, not grass. But you get my drift. I want it to kind of have that whimsical cottagey feel. And so that will be down here. I want a seed starting greenhouse right here. That won't happen next year, but eventually I'd like to get one put there. So I'm leaving that place for it. I want to move some of our peonies down here and divide them out so that we have more. all kinds of stuff I want to do. So that's, again, why we're making some changes on some of the things that I'm doing this year I won't be doing next year, or I'll be doing differently. So we'll talk more about that later, but let's look at some more volunteer flowers. Here's some echinacea that is probably 3.5 to 4 feet tall, and just stunning. I love putting these in my arrangements, and even like this one, still perfect for an arrangement because you just pick all those petals off, and then, well, I don't have a whole lot of dexterity in my hands with all this stuff in here, but you pick those petals off, and then you're just left with this really cool textural element for your bouquets, and I just love it. So they don't go to waste that way. And because like normally you wouldn't want to put that flower in because the petals have been all beaten up and eaten, and like this one is way past due, but you could put the center part in there and it's still really neat. Here's a Mexican sunflower that it's also called Tithonia, if you're more familiar with it, called that. But it's here, and it's probably 4 foot tall, and it'll get a little bit taller than that, and if it didn't have so much weeds, it'd probably get a little bit wider. I'm seeing some more sunflowers coming up, so that's great. I don't know what kind those are, but those are volunteers. And then over here, I had my carrots planted here last year. I've got some rhubarb and some rhubarb. Don't really know what I'm doing with rhubarb. Maybe I'm supposed to cut those back this fall. I don't know. I'm going to have to research that. I planted those for my husband. I don't like rhubarb, but he does. I planted my carrots here last year and obviously missed some. But they do have some really pretty flowers. So anyways, I really have to get back in so my husband can go to work. But I wanted to just show you just a quick overview of the garden and kind of explain where I've been. I've not been focusing too much on long format videos. I have been doing a little bit more of the shorts, and I've been focusing on my TikTok. So if you're not following me on TikTok, head on over there. I post a lot more on TikTok, so head on over there and follow me there. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. The sunflowers are just so beautiful. I'm going to wrap this up, head inside, eat some breakfast, get my kids going for the day, get the store loaded. I've got milk chilling in the freezer, so I've got to get that moved out to the store here in about 20 minutes and get on with my day full of chores. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you're drowning in your garden like I am, you're not alone. But I hope you guys are doing well. I hope your garden is full of produce, and I will catch you all in the next video.